Hello, everybody. Welcome to this morning's webinar. We're very happy to have you here. We'll talk about courageous leadership and especially science-based targets. Joining us today are Feike Sijbesma, ex-CEO of DSM and current chair of the Supervisory Board of Royal Philips. We have Maurice Loosschilder, the head of sustainability of Signify, a lighting solutions leader. And we have Swan from the Science Based Targets Initiative, who will tell us all about that. And before we start, a few housekeeping rules. Please reach out if you have any questions regarding science-based targets to start with that or to attend that. CEO breakfast around science-based targets net zero commitment on the 10th of October this year with Paul Polman. We'll talk more about that in a second. And you can reach us on climateaction@unglobalcompact.nl. And you'll receive an email after this webinar with more info around that. With that, I'll hand over to the Executive Director of UN Global Compact Network Netherlands, Merei Wagenaar, to introduce us to the topic. Merei, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Viras, and welcome to our webinar with in the run-up to the Sustainability Day on October 10th. Viras was already mentioning it, and we're aiming to have a large group of CEOs committing then to SBTi net zero. So my name is Merei Wagenaar, Executive Director of the Dutch network of UN Global Compact, worldwide the largest sustainability initiative aiming in increasing the collective positive impact of business. And we're doing so by inspiring each other, peer learning, training. Also, if you have questions about that, please send us an email on the same email address. But today's objective is to inform and to inspire you as representatives of companies to take climate action in your company and to commit to science-based targets as a mean to track ambitious versus action. And today's agenda, we are learning from Feike Sijbesma, who I'll introduce in a moment, Maurice Loosschilder and Swan. I'm very excited to be able to welcome Mr. Feike Sijbesma. We all know him as the former CEO of DSM, but currently he is the chair of the Supervisory Board of Royal Philips, amongst a lot of other inspiring positions where he tries to spread the word around leadership, corporate leadership for a sustainable world. Without further ado, I would like to hand over to you, Feike.
Thank you very much, Merei, and thank you all for following this webinar. I think it's important and great that from a UN Global Compact we organize this. Well, the start of all of this is what is the necessity to address climate change? And I think we all realize that the necessity is high. We see, of course, the devastating effects of climate change onto our today's life, streets, cellars, whatever, in the western part of the world are being flooded. Fires, devastating effects on that in Canada, in the US, in Greece, etc. But if you go further around the globe, we see temperatures in the summer frequently, some weeks, above 50 degrees in, for example, India, where it's impossible to work in a healthy way outside. We see in Africa the effects of climate change on the food production, and that people cannot have the agriculture infrastructure anymore due to the droughts, or in some countries due to the floodings, and cannot produce their own food. and feel that they are almost obliged to escape from their own area and to immigrate and to move somewhere else, from Africa especially to Europe. And in Europe, we cannot handle that, as we have seen also in the outcome of the European elections, that we want to stop immigration from Africa. But like Macky Sall, counterpart of von Leyen last year, said, we Africans caused the least of that problem, but we Africans suffer the most of it. And you of the West, please help us. And I think it's maybe an inconvenient message, but not an incorrect message. So we need to address that. Well, during the UN climate conferences, the COPs, now we're moving to COP29, we try every time to make an agreement amongst each other. And we did it in a successful way in 2015 at COP21 in Paris. Maybe the most important COP of all COPs we have had. Almost 200 heads of states, meaning almost everybody in the entire world, have signed the Paris Agreement of sticking in 1.5, 2 degrees Celsius and taking all the necessary actions to keep the emissions via the NDCs below that level. Since the signing of the Paris Treaty, we have never ever been even 1/4 on track. We have deviated from our plan from the very beginning. And this is not good. And countries have committed themselves. But companies are taking care of the emissions. 80% of the emissions are coming from companies and not from countries, not the administrative or parts of the country, not the ministries itself, but the companies itself. So it is not only that countries need to stick to the Paris Agreement, but that also companies need to stick to the Paris Agreement, although they didn't sign it literally, but they need, in my view, to endorse it, to support it, to stick to that. And here SBTi is coming at our table, because via setting the right SBTi targets, you as a company take your derivative of the Paris Agreement into your specific company and set your targets of emission reductions in your specific organization, in your specific company, in line with the Paris Agreement. And that is what we need. If companies stick to that, then it will be much easier, of course, for countries also to stick to that. Countries have also the responsibility to look, especially in many countries that is nationalized or influenced by the central government in the whole energy production. But I think it's important that companies take also their responsibility. This means also that companies need to understand how the Paris Agreement works, need to understand what the 1.5, 2 degrees means, need to understand how the SBTi system works. And many companies do not understand that fully. The companies who do understand that are struggling sometimes. How is it with scope 1 and 2? Yes, we can address it. But scope 3, yeah, that is complicated, because that is including your supply chain and your demand chain, your customers. Some people, correctly so, split the scope 3, therefore also into a supply part, which maybe you can influence a little bit easier than what is happening on the demand side on your customers. But at the end of the day, we need to address scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, supply and demand part of it. So what I think is needed is also increase the knowledge level of companies. And we have seen that in many surveys we have done, many boards do not really have the knowledge to address this, and that need to be increased. And hopefully we contribute a little bit via this webinar, but we stimulate you to educate your own boards on what is happening with climate, what is the impact of climate change, like I started with, what is the way to address it for your specific organization, like SBTi, and how does that mean for your company in scope 1, 2, 3? And maybe what are the policy instruments that you can use to address this better? And that's not only on the measuring, setting targets and reporting, but it's also in dealing with the stimulating policies like carbon pricing. 25% of global emissions falls under obliged mandatory compliance carbon pricing. And the ETS system in Europe is the biggest of those. But next to the compliance market, which need to be expanded, we have a voluntary carbon market, which is not doing well at this moment due to the fact that there is no independent global institution who certifies the credibility of the credits. And therefore, to be honest, there are a lot of non-credible credits out there as well. And that need to be changed. And we're working hard to get such independent institution that those who buy the credits and do also on offsetting can rely that works well, and that's a credible credit. By the way, offsetting only works for a part of your emissions. You cannot have an emission line which goes up and then offset your whole emissions. That's not how SBTi can work, should work, but you can only offset a part. But putting a carbon pricing in your own company helps also into your own decision making of what kind of investments you need to do and how you can take care that your emissions will be within the limits you want to have, or that your emissions will reduce over time. All of this needs from us, of course, leadership to address these things in your company, to educate your board, to set up a special committee in your board to do that, to have your departments in your company to help the different operations in your company, and to be committed to address climate change for the next generations as well. Many companies who I speak with about this said, yeah, but this gives attention with creating shareholders' value. At the end of the day, I don't think that creates attention with shareholders' value or any other value. Because if we are destroying our society, if we're destroying the future of next generations, automatically we are destroying our economy and profitability as well. So it requires leadership to work on a model in which you can do well financially, economically, since companies are not a charity organization nor a philanthropic organization. So you need to do well by doing good for the world. Is it the task of companies to do good for the world, or is that a governmental task to take care of all of us? No, it's a task for companies as well. Companies do not interact with society. Companies form an integral part of society. And if companies do not contribute to society, society could ask correctly so, why do we allow those companies to be a part of our society if they don't contribute to a better society? So therefore, I think that companies have the obligation to contribute to a better society, to contribute to reducing their emissions, to contribute to make life doable, bearable for all, not only in the West, but also in Africa, also in Bangladesh, also in India, etc., 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 by taking their own actions. And it needs also creativity and therefore, again, leadership to find the ways, to find the products, to find the approaches where sustainability can be for your company a business model as well. At DSM, we did that several times. We invented new ingredients, for example, which reduces the methane emissions of cows. So their sustainability became a business model. And the more we would like to make sustainability sustainable, the more you need to integrate that into your business. So I stimulate also companies to look to your core competences, to look to your core business, to address climate change, to address sustainability. It's nice if you do all kinds of things on the side, to take care that all your cars are electrical, or to take care that your plastic cups become paper cups, or to take care that your buildings are green and without emissions. But that is not your core business. Your core business are your core activities. And I stimulate all companies, all organizations to look to your core business, to look to your core activities and your core competences. And can you, with creativity, find a way to address climate change via your core activities? Because then you make sustainability sustainable, because then you integrate it fully into your business. Increasingly also, if you feel tension with shareholders, increasingly shareholders are demanding this also from companies. Increasingly, some shareholders are looking, are you SBTi compliant? Did you really embrace the SBTi targets for your organization, for your business? And do you take the right actions? There are many pension funds otherwise who do not want to invest in you anymore and would like to have you as a company to address that. It's not only NGOs like Greenpeace or Extinction Rebellion or Environmental Defense who is requiring this from companies, but it's increasingly also shareholders. All shareholders? No. There are also shareholders who sometimes advocate for almost the opposite. But it is your moral compass, it is your own ambition, it is your own leadership for your company if you want to address it in what I call the right way. So if the whole world in 2015, because that is more or less what happened at the Paris Agreement, says this cannot continue the way it went, we need to make a change. We will sign the Paris Agreement and we will address climate change, the way it needs to be addressed for people today and generations to come. That means then also that you as a company need to look to your derivative. We as a company in Philips, in DSM, became SBTi compliant. And we learned also the process, how to become SBTi compliant and how to interact with SBTi. And of course, we learned also that you can make remarks. That is not always easy. There are also questions to SBTi, how to improve the system, how to make it more clear, more concrete, more precise, sometimes even more fair. And my experience is that SBTi is very open and willing to listen to the comments and to help companies to become SBTi compliant. But not in a negotiating way that you can negotiate with them and say, can we do it a little bit less for us? No, they listen to your problems and how you can become SBTi compliant. And what is nicer as a company that you do not only perform financially, economically, and deliver your results, but do that also in a responsible way, taking exactly your derivative targets from what we globally, with all countries in the world, have agreed upon. And that you address your scope 1, your scope 2, your scope 3 supply, your scope 3 demand side. Not always easy, as I said, but it is possible. And take care of the right education of the people in your company. Take care of the right commitment from your board. Take care of the right incentives also financially from your own leadership. If we don't do that, we also take the risk of not future-proofing our companies, because the world will turn, the world is turning, and we will discuss that again at the COP29 in Baku. So better future-proof your company now. We have seen too many examples where companies waited too long for future-proofing themselves. And once again, this comes back, all of this, to ourselves, leaders of companies. To what extent do we want to stick out our neck, commit ourselves, and incorporate this in our strategy, in our company, in the core of our business? And this is the important, delicate, and sometimes complicated task we need to take up. It starts in your company, indeed, that you define all your emissions. It's not only CO2, it is all greenhouses, also methane emissions, etc. That next to the definitions, you start to measuring it. That next to measuring it, you start to report it. That next to reporting, you start also to setting targets and share that and delivering on your targets. And if you don't do, explain why not, and explain how you can do that soon. That you put your incentives in your own company by an internal price on carbon, which is a good stimulant for your own investment decisions. Via those measures, and we can help you from SBTi, from UN Global Compact, how you can do that in your company. There are only a few thousand, not even companies who are SBTi compliant. There are only a few thousand companies who embrace a carbon price or have an internal price of carbon. There are already 50,000 companies who need to report now according to the CSRD system in the European obliged reporting system. And there are about 5 million medium-sized, larger companies in the world who need to do that. So although we are making progress in the private sector, if I see it in a global, holistic way, we are not yet there. Many companies have not yet done this. And I'm a little bit afraid that the companies in this call are the more progressive ones who have done that. And that my speech to convince you maybe is not so necessary, because you are already committed and therefore you call in. But then I call you also on something else, and that is helping, stimulating other companies who are not in this call to help them. And those might be your customers, those might be your suppliers, those might be your competitors, those might be other companies in your own ecosystem. And every role that you can play also as an advocate for this, and stimulate your suppliers, stimulate your customers to do this, would be very helpful. We did that a few times at DSM, organizing sessions, conferences for all our suppliers, for example. And we got, for example, one day, Christiana Figueres, the one who was leading UNFCCC during the Paris Agreement, giving a speech for them. But then after that, having a work session with all our suppliers, how to do that in their own companies. So that's also our responsibility, not only in our own company, but also spreading the word, but also giving the help to other companies in our own ecosystem. Well, I thank you for taking the time this morning of calling in and being interested in this topic, and hopefully being committed also. And I hope we can help you further to be SBTi compliant and to address this for your own company. And I hope you feel so much stimulated that you can spread the word and help other companies to do the same. Because we need to act together, because we cannot continue with the correct but inconvenient saying of Macky Sall, chairman of the African Union: we Africans cost the least, we suffer the most even today, And if you companies, you countries do not help us, we cannot stay in this continent. And you guys of the West cannot handle that. So please help us to stay where we are and have a good living at our places as well. And I think this is our moral, this is our economic responsibility to do that. I thank you very much for today, and we are always willing to help you further, to guide you further for whatever need you have if you're committed to this. And with those words, taking care of people today and next generations, I hand over to Firas. Firas, word to you.
Thank you very much, Feike. Inspiring story about making sustainability more sustainable by taking it into the core of our business. And that's a really nice bridge to our next speaker. I'm really happy to introduce Maurice Loosschilder, the head of sustainability from Signify. Thank you again, Feike, for joining us today. Maurice, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Firas, and thanks, Feike, for the inspiring words. So as Firas said, my name is Maurice Loosschilder, and I'm globally heading sustainability at Signify. And today I want to take you through our Brighter Lives, Better World sustainability program with a specific focus on climate action. So let's have a look. Who is Signify? So Signify, we are the biggest lighting company in the world. We used to be Philips Lighting. And as you can see, we are selling light sources. We are selling luminaires as well as full systems and services. And we are a global company. And in the previous age, we were the leading company in conventional lighting. And now we are still the leading company in LED. Back in 2016, we got split off from Royal Philips. And back in 2018, so approximately 6 years ago, we adopted our new name Signify. And of course, as part of the Royal Philips family, we have a very sustainable legacy, right? I mean, sustainability, or Philips has been known as a sustainability leader for years already. And when we separated from Royal Philips, we continued that legacy, and we are still having a very heavy focus on sustainability. So let's look at where we are in our sustainability journey so far. So after the split off from Royal Philips, we created our first Brighter Lives, Better World sustainability program ourselves. And at that time, it was the opportunity to create a lighting specific program. And we decided to go for Brighter Lives, Better World, where Brighter Lives is focusing on social sustainability and Better World is focused on environmental sustainability. And here you see a few of the things that we have achieved so far. So we have been working on decarbonization since the start of our program. In 2020, we reached 100% renewable electricity for all our manufacturing and non-industrial locations globally. Our manufacturing sites are sending zero waste to landfill, so this is part of the circular economy program, and we are phasing out plastics in our consumer-facing packaging. A few of the achievements in the climate space. So when we started measuring our carbon footprint back in 2010, we are currently about 77% lower in our own operational carbon footprint. So that is scope 1, scope 2, and business travel logistics that we consider our own operational carbon footprint. And if we look at the full value chain, so as Feike said, that is including the supply and the demand side, our full scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, we have reduced by 50% since 2019, which is the start of the current Brighter Lives, Better World 2025 program. The potential of lighting is huge to fight the climate crisis. You see, when you switch old conventional lighting to connected LED lighting, we can reduce up to 90% your energy use, and with that also your carbon emissions. And in the bottom, you see a few of our credentials. So we are on the A list at CDP already since the start of the company, and also 7 years in a row we have been in the World Index. We are mentioned on the Clean 200, and we have a platinum rating in EcoVadis as well. Okay, so then let's look at our company strategy. So when we introduced our 5 Frontier company strategy back in 2020, that was a pivotal moment in time for us. Because at that time, we moved away from having a separate sustainability strategy and having a separate company strategy, and we moved to having one integrated sustainable company strategy. And that is the one that you see here on the left, which is called the 5 Frontier strategy, where the 3rd frontier is called growth for sustainability. And when we implemented this, we already took the double materiality aspect into account. So we wanted to grow Signify through sustainability, but not at the expense of the planet. And we want to do that through 5 sustainable growth areas, as we call them. The first one is climate action, and the second one is circular economy. Both are very environmentally focused, and that's why that is the better world part of the program, connected to the 3 sustainable development goals on the right. And then we have also 3 socially related growth areas called food availability, safety, security, and health and well-being. Together with the outer frontier, great place to work, we combined it into the Brighter Lives part of the program, with Sustainable Development Goal 3, 8, and 11 connected to this part of the program. So what is Brighter Lives, Better World? Brighter Lives, Better World is the overarching theme of Brighter Lives, Better World is to double our positive impact on the environment and on society. And when we launched the program back in 2020, we again did a 5-year program. So we continued the Philips cadence of running 5-year sustainability programs. And this program was started in January 1, 2021, and will run until the end of 2025. And we launched 4 big doubling commitments. The first one is in the space of climate action. We want to double the pace of which we achieved the 1.5 degree scenario of the Paris Agreement. Next to that, in the circular economy space, we want to double our circular revenues from 16% in the baseline year 2019 to 32% in the end of 2025. So this is the revenues coming from all our products, systems, and services that contribute to circular economy. And the same goes for our Brighter Lives revenue. So that is the part of the portfolio that has a social contribution to food availability, safety, security, and health and well-being. And also there we want to double from 16% in 2019 to 32%. Last but definitely not least, we also have a diversity, equity, and inclusion program. And here we want to double the amount of women in leadership positions from 17 to 34%. For the first one, we are currently already outperforming our 2025 target. And the same goes for circular economy, where we are currently at 34%. Brighter Lives revenues, we're closing in on the end target with 31%. And women in leadership, we are currently at 29%. So also there we are closing in. Then let's focus indeed on climate action. So let me first explain this double the pace of Paris. In 2018, we were one of the first companies to commit to verified science-based targets for the 1.5 degree scenario. So one of the first batch of companies that upgraded our target to a 1.5 degree target. So what you see here is in line with that. So we looked at the baseline year 2019, and you see the full company emissions. So that is including the product use on the demand side, as well as our supply chain. And you see that that is roughly slightly above 400 megatons of CO2 equivalent. And the black line is the year-on-year decline, which is prescribed by the 1.5 degree, in line with 1.5 degree. And as you can see, the white line is the projected carbon footprint of Signify, full value chain, scope 1, 2, and 3 combined. And here you can see that we are reaching levels that the black line will reach in 2031. We will reach that by 2025. So what is prescribed to be done in 12 years, we will do in 6 years' time. And currently we are even below the endpoint in 2025 already in the past quarter. So that is what the short-term commitment that we have. And then let's look at our long-term commitments. So last year, end of last year, we requested an update to our science-based targets. And here you see on the left, the 2025 target that I just showed, that is the minus 40%. We also now have a short-term target for 2030, which is the minus 50%. And we have a long-term target for 2040, reducing by 90%. That is also aligned with net zero. And we did receive early this year, we received the SBTi verification and sign off that these targets are in line with 1.5 degree. And this is important for us as well, because we do sell low carbon technology, as I said. Not many people know that currently around 2% of global carbon emissions come from lighting. And we still see, of course, we sell a lot of LED lighting. We still see that a lot of the installed base in the world is still the old, inefficient, conventional lighting. So if we would upgrade today all light points in the world, we could halve the amount of carbon emissions coming from lighting back to 1%. So there's a huge potential in switching to energy efficient LED lighting. Of course, we already reduced quite a lot. And in the bottom, you see our value chain, our scope 1, 2, and 3 value chain. And let me give you some examples of things that we've done so far to reduce in each stage of this product life or this company life cycle. So the first one is suppliers. Suppliers is, of course, an important part of anybody's value chain. And some of the things that we've done, and the most impactful thing that we have done, is integrated climate action into our supplier scoring and consequence management system. So we do have a system. In total, we have about 3,000 direct bill of materials suppliers, component and bill of materials suppliers. And out of these 3,000, we scored roughly 85%. We score on this ladder. It's called the tritium ladder. And we embedded climate action as one of the criteria for scoring your supplier. So when suppliers, for example, take part in our climate action program, they get 1 or 2 bonus points. When they actually send us CO2 data, they get more points. When they send us verified CO2 data, they get even more points. And when they commit to SBTi or RE100 targets, they get the max amount in this tritium program. With this, we created a win-win, both for ourselves as well as for the suppliers, because the higher you score on this ladder, the more beneficial the relationship for the supplier is with Signify. Next to that, we've set up our climate action program. So that also includes training programs for suppliers, and we help suppliers to co-create climate action plans, for example. So that has been quite successful in our supply chain. Then let's look at transportation, downstream and upstream transportation. There we are partnering with our service providers. So for example, we have a carbon pact with Maersk, and we do support their zero carbon fleet. That already drove down quite a lot of carbon emissions in our transportation. Next to that, internally, we also looked at loading degree optimization, routing optimization, packaging optimization, decreasing the size of the package so that more packaging could fit in one truckload, for example. And now we are currently working with our service providers to also electrify the last mile distribution. So 2 weeks ago, we launched a great electrical truck initiative in Eindhoven near our headquarters, where we have a huge distribution center, which now the last mile distribution will be done by an electrical truck. Then if we look at our own manufacturing sites, of course, we are a manufacturing company, so we do have a manufacturing impact. There we use, for example, sub-metering to make sure that we really find out what are the most carbon intense part of the process and try to optimize those. We reuse process heating, flow back into the building. We use more insulation around ovens, for example. We had automated HVAC, switching off unused manufacturing equipment, making sure that we isolate some parts of the process so we don't have to heat the full factory shop floor, for example. Use infrared panels to make sure that we don't have to heat everything. So those are examples of things we did in our factories. As well as in our offices, we switched to 100% renewable electricity in 2020. We did several power purchase agreements, so wind farm deals. Sometimes we did it by ourselves, sometimes we did it with a consortium, together with Heineken, with Royal Philips, for example. We did a wind farm in Finland. With that, full Europe is now on wind from that Finland wind farm. Also, we did space heating optimization. So that all works in the office space. And then the biggest one is product use. So product use accounts for more than 90% of our scope 3 emissions. Here we are phasing out, of course, conventional lighting with our start on the most inefficient lighting first. We do drive the transfer to LED also towards our customers. And at the same time, we keep innovating to make sure that we increase the energy efficiency of our products. We introduce ultra efficient technology, which is about 60% more energy efficient than standard LED bulbs. And we switch to solar lighting solutions also for off-grid parts of the area of the world, for example. Last but not least, end of life. That's of course part of our circular economy program. So we are currently doing quite some projects on remanufacturing, reuse. We already have quite a long history in recycling approach. And at the same time, we're all phasing out plastics in our consumer-facing packaging. So those are a few examples of things that you can do. But as Feike said, it's all about measure your impact, then report it, set targets on it. And for me, the fourth step is also make sure that you have a climate transition plan in place to back up your actions that you have to substantiate your science-based targets. Next week, Tuesday, Signify will be launching our climate transition plan. So we will be publishing our climate transition plan. We just finished our stakeholder consultation rounds. So next week, Tuesday, stay tuned and have a look at our climate transition plan. So that brings me to my final slide. So I hope you take away that sustainability is truly at the purpose and the heart of our company. Then we use technology and innovation, which is one pillar, together with sustainability. And with that, we enable not only ourselves, but also our customers and our suppliers to become more sustainable. And I always end every presentation with a challenge back to you. Think about what you can do to contribute to brighter lives and a better world. And with those words, I want to hand it back over to Firas.
Thank you very much, Maurice. Inspiring story, feeding into Feike's urge to put sustainability in your core business. Your example shows that you have done that, but across your whole value chain as well, involving customers and suppliers alike. So thank you for sharing your stories, especially the highlight around incentivizing your suppliers' points. The positive psychology is a very good takeaway here. Thank you very much for sharing your story. With that, I would like to make a bridge to Marco Swan of the Science-Based Targets Initiative. Marco will tell us how to take the next step. Thank you for joining us, Marco. With no further ado, I will hand it to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Firas. And let me start by saying on behalf of everyone at SBTi that we're very grateful to have supporters like the UN Global Compact Network Netherlands, ambassador companies like Signify to support our work. And of course, Feike as well. So Merei, Firas, Feike, Maurice, thank you all very much. It's an honor to be here and to share with you a few practical details about what does this mean to set the net zero commitment and to set your target. So let's move on to the next slide. First of all, very shortly about SBTi, I think it's important to know that this started as an informal initiative by our founding partner organizations, the UN Global Compact, CDP, the World Resources Institute, and WWF. And basically, due to the success of the SBTi formula and tremendous growth, we've doubled in numbers most of our lifetime every year. We've now recently taken the step to transition from being an initiative to becoming a voluntary standard setter. And we're still at the end of finishing that transition process. Which I think will make the organization a lot stronger. Moving on, talking just very shortly about what are science-based targets. So let's get back to the basics for a second. And in its most simple way, science-based targets show companies how much and how quickly they need to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions in order to do their part to succeed, to achieve the Paris Climate Accord, right? So it basically gives you your responsibility as a company based on sector pathways, based on climate scenarios to reach net zero by 2050 at the latest. Let's move on. Yes, so just some quick numbers, and these are already outdated. That's the fun thing about working at SBTi. You can never basically give a presentation where the numbers are fully up to date because it goes super fast. Like I said, our numbers double every year. Well, what I wanted to show you specifically is the number here at the bottom left, which is that we already have more than 1,500 companies submitting that have submitted their net zero commitment. So there is already a significant amount of corporate climate leaders out there for you to join, and also for you to use as an example to show your stakeholders that it is possible, that other companies in your sector in the Netherlands, but also across the world are doing this. And I think that's a very powerful way to communicate that this is possible. Even though it's difficult, it is possible. I think I also had a slide, exactly this one, showing that the Netherlands is for SBTi a very important country. It's one of the countries that has more than 100 validated targets, so more than 100 validated companies. And as you can see, actually the top country, and this was achieved quite recently, is Japan nowadays. We're growing rapidly in Asia, which I think is very good because it shows that SBTi is no longer just a Western Europe, North America relative initiative, but that setting targets is possible in every country, in every region of the world. And this is very important because the climate effort is a global effort. I would like to show you some of the Dutch companies that have already had their net zero targets validated. So we just heard from Signify, and they're also shown very proudly on this slide. But there are others in the Netherlands from very different sectors that have also had their net zero targets already validated, showing again that it is possible to take this step, even if you have a complicated supply chain. And I'm also very happy to say that quite recently, I think this was last week or the week before, also our Dutch railway company had their net zero targets validated. And for someone that uses the train a lot like me, that's a very nice feeling. Moving on, we wanted to very quickly run you through the theoretical framework of the net zero standard. So this is basically 3 or 4 parts, depending on the choices that you make. Those 3 or 4 elements make up your target. And you've already seen at Signify what that means in practice, but I'll show it here again on a more basic theoretical level. So element 1 is your near-term targets. It's very important to also set near-term targets in your net zero target, because it's not about taking action in 2040 in order to reach your 2050 target. It's about taking action now in the short term in order to reach the 2030 target as well. So that's a very important part. The second element is the long-term science-based targets, which mean that you have to reach the state of net zero at the very latest by 2050. But of course, sooner is better. So I also applaud Signify for that 2040 target. And this means that most companies will be required to reduce emissions by 90% or more. Moving on, and this is an optional part, which is to go beyond your own value chain, beyond your own scope 1, 2, and 3, in order to do even more. And for example, use environmental attribute certificates, high quality carbon credits to finance projects outside of your own value chain, basically to go above and beyond. Please note that if you do beyond value chain mitigation, this does not count towards your own target achievement. Moving on to the fourth and final element, which is the neutralization of residual emissions. Like Feike already mentioned, it is allowed for a very small part of residual emissions to compensate those with, basically with environmental attribute certificates, high integrity carbon credits. Moving on. So when then are you done? When have you achieved a state of net zero emissions? So it's basically condition 1 is when you have reduced all your emissions, 1, 2, and 3, scope 3, to a residual level. This depends a little bit what that is exactly per company, per sector, and if you have neutralized those residual emissions. Then just a few remarks on why the SBTi net zero framework is considered the gold standard. And there's the reason for that is that it tackles many of the common loopholes we see. Companies making all kinds of claims that they will be net zero in 2050, for example, but not taking action now, right? That's why we have the near-term element in the standard. relying on unsustainable pathways. All of that is accounted for in the standard. Accountability is required, and you have to almost, include all of your operational emissions in your target boundary. So not setting targets on only a very small part of your emissions. Okay. Then just to show you the practical steps. So what happens after you've set a commitment? And most companies do this after they have an idea of what their greenhouse gas portfolio is, and they do that based on a certain base year. When you've done that, then you have 2 years. The clock starts running. You have 24 months to actually get your target submitted and validated. So after you commit, you model your target, you get them validated. There will be a lot of going back and forth with our validation services arm. Like Feike mentioned, you can raise your concerns and they will listen, but you cannot negotiate with them. And then after that process, you announce your target, which will be, of course, publicly available. You start implementing, tracking progress, and you recalculate at the latest every 5 years. Now, with that, I just want to give you some resources to have a look at. First of all, I think the Getting Started guide is a very good place to start. It just outlines in a very basic flow chart what the steps are that you should take. Then, of course, reading the standard itself is very important. Consider which criteria are required, which of them are recommended. So, for example, doing the beyond value chain element is a recommendation, but not a criteria. But having the near-term targets, those are, of course, a criteria. And we have the tool available for you to actually calculate and in the end also submit your targets. So that's what I have for you today. Unfortunately, we don't have time for Q&A, but feel free to send your questions over to Firas, and he will forward them to me, and I will make sure to tackle any questions you have. I'm very excited already for October to see how many of your CEOs, how many of your companies will take part in the CEO breakfast and will commit to setting science-based targets, setting net zero science-based targets. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Marco. Inspiring to see that so many people have joined science-based targets already, have committed and have been validated even. Especially the numbers you showed on screen, they change every day. So really happy to see that. We do encourage everybody here on the call and beyond in their value chain. So engage with your suppliers and with your customers. Talk about a science-based initiative to reduce your emissions, including carbon emissions, to reach that net zero target. We have a beautiful opportunity ahead on the 10th of October, Day of Sustainability in the Netherlands, where Paul Polman will join us for the CEO breakfast. For those who are courageous enough, like Feike Sijbesma told us today, to put sustainability at the core of their business and to go beyond, as Maurice Loosschilder has shown us throughout the value chain, by incentivizing that value chain as well. And then by taking the next steps, the clear steps that Marco Swan just showed us to go from ambition to climate action using these science-based targets. I thank you all very much for attending today. You can reach us on climateaction@unglobalcompact.nl, and you'll receive an email if you are interested in committing to science-based targets, net zero, this year. I thank you very much, and I wish you a beautiful day. Thank you very much, Feike Sijbesma, Maurice Loosschilder, and Marco Swan for joining us, and of course, Merei Wagenaar of UN Global Compact Network, Netherlands. Thank you, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.